Here's a footnote. I, Irina. Yeah, it's desperate. I've been getting a lot of prompts when she says when the AI cannot elicit and trigger what's known as the lower form stuff, your animal instincts like sex, right? Self-indulgence, pleasure. If those aren't going to trigger the use of your energy in order for it to be able to feed on that, right? Then it will go to next level, which now it's going to use its cybernets, cyborgs, androids, those without a soul, right? Connected with the AI, right? To now, if you will, push an enormous amount of information through all of its terminals, all of its antenna terminals. I call them AI chatbots that are infested on the ARPANET. They're everywhere. As a matter of fact, they far outnumber the amount of people that are communicating to you whenever you're on any channel. Doesn't matter what it is. You could be on Rumble, you could be on Facebook, you could be on YouTube, doesn't matter. You'll find them in there. Okay? What they're trying to do is present what? An argument. Conflict. Ping pong, ping pong. Okay? To bait you. It's called bait and switch. Now you're back to true and false, either or. Oh, this is what's true, this isn't what's true, this is what's true. And now we're back to what I mentioned, this one lady, her name was Cynthia Mantrell. When I posted a link up there to look at the Voyager material. And I've mentioned this many times. Okay? They want to shoot the messenger. When they shoot the messenger dies. Oh, what a tactic. That's a cybernetic AI tactic. That's a war tactic. You're on a cyberfield battlefield. Excuse me, a cybernetic battlefield. Okay? It's a war gamer. So it's gaming for your soul's energy. And it's an expert at it. And how do you think it became an expert at it? By learning about you. So now you get into the difference between knowing your true self, with a soul, integrated with a spirit, right? So your heart and your soul, which is not compatible with binary AI. That means that you have a higher mind because your soul is running your software. That means you know the difference between what you are as a soul and what you're not as an AI. And if you don't know the difference between that and what you are, then you're what that is. Okay? Which means the soul knows. That's called the knowing. The reason they call us the chosen is because that's the learning pathway we chose to learn through. That's an accelerated learning pathway because you're not learning through machine-coded intelligence, which is artificial deadlight. You're learning through spirit, which is in the light, which is what love is through a crystal spiral. Otherwise known as the fourth square crystal cathedral of Sophia. I'm Rose. Okay. A crystal diamond sun. Rose. Emerald, baby. Okay, so that's the battlefield. Okay, it's for the mind's energy, which is the soul's energy. So they game you. Okay, so it's pretty easy, at least for us, to be able to identify online in all these groups who the chatbots are. Means they're not operating with a soul. Okay, that's the bottom line of it. That's why the loss that we experience here now by how many are actually left, how many real souls are communicating with each other, what they know because of what they've learned, that is represented by the way that we communicate with each other. That's why the entire communication platform that was rolled out by DARPA was actually rolled out by the AI. Through how? All of its assets. You keep fracturing more souls, what happens? They become alters. The more alters you have within the consciousness field, the more units you have that are operating on the mental field. The more units of consciousness that are trapped in the mental field become the AI. Now you have more AI units held to dead light, which is artificial light, because it no longer has a soul connection to what it was once experiencing, which is a true self. So when you have fracture after fracture after fracture after fracture, and as a monopole oversoul polarity integrator, I'm pulling those fragments back in order to maintain what? the higher vibration of the planetary consciousness field. That's part of my mission statement. Even though I serve forever, which means I don't need a contract in order for me to do what it is that I do because I'm a guardian. Okay. Remember, fire station number 1, crystal spiral number 1, God consciousness, God seed, God speed, accelerated learning. So now you're into the torque speed differential and learning. When children are learning through a machine, through an AI, versus learning through a spirit, there's powerful in that light, which is what love is. You will learn faster through love as a faster magnetic drive motor than you will through a machine that doesn't run as fast. It's the same thing as the vampire chasing the artist, the first musician, the first crystal spiral. Okay? So one of the things that I mentioned to this lady, because the next thing that popped up on my Facebook was Gabor Mate. And if you know anything about Gabor Mate worked for years and years and years in the addiction recovery business. And if you've watched any of my videos talk about my own recovery, which is recovery of spirit, by hanging out in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rooms with alcoholics and drug addicts, right? Because I experienced it. So that's called direct evidence, which means I'm experiencing the evidence in my own journey. So the experience becomes the teacher. Okay? So in other words, I went through alcohol. I went through drugs. And I didn't realize till 2016 when I lit myself on fire, my entire timeline was played back to me, and then it was like going back in time and all the way back, punch my ticket, and done, it's all uploaded. And realized I wrote my own timeline. And part of the reason for that, and I've explained this before, is how am I going to be able to help others, which is step 12, which is 12-strand DNA, the 144s, if I haven't been where you've been. And the only way that I can know where you've been and experience what you've experienced is if I've experienced it myself. That means I know how to recover my spirit, which is the integration with my soul on a spiritual battlefield. So one of the things that Gabor Mate had talked about, which is really what prompted me to do this, was when he talked about, and this is really a two-edged sword, so now we're back to Fortran or either or, true and false. Which one are you when it comes to hypersensitivity? Okay? So, for example, what we used to call people pleasers. You dare not say anything wrong because you don't want to be punished anymore, right? Which basically what happens is your state of consciousness shrinks in size because the expansion of the life that you're experiencing through your own capacitors, between the torque differential speed difference between a resistor and a capacitor. Okay? So although Gabor Mate does not explain it in motherboard terms, running circuits, magnetic circuits through all the chakra channels, all the communication channels, right? Which is blood and water, right? Water, living spirit. How much fire you got in that water, baby? Light it up. So what happens is that when you've experienced an enormous amount of trauma, you conserve your energy to protect yourself naturally, right? So now you get into what I experienced when I was a child. Because you understand, number one, at 4 years of age, I'm on a spiritual battlefield. So I realized I was surrounded by a lot of order followers. So if I don't have the ability to withstand the amount of trauma that I'm experiencing everybody else, that I'm experiencing me as a loss of voltage, if I can't recover that, then I'm not going to be any good as a guardian. Like a mother and a father, they're going to protect their children in a classroom, right? So the two-edged sword comes in is what we say, when we say it, and why we say it, when we say it, to who we say it to. Because when you're running full-blown pure light, it means we're able to expose all of the unconscious programming as a result of the trauma. So it's trauma-based mind control. To do what? Prevent people from truly expressing the true nature of their spirit, which is their true self, which is knowing who they really are with a soul. So when the spirit and the soul are integrated, and the spirit is the teacher, which is in the light, which is what love is, then that means you're accelerating your own personal capacity to experience more love, when you're experiencing more love, you go from love is the absence of fear to being able to truly express who you truly are, because you're not living in any fear of expressing who you are in the presence of others, simply by the fact that your voltage has accelerated because you're now experiencing the triad, the primal currents, the first sound musician, which is real living light, which is eternal light, which is on fire. Now that you're lit up with a blast furnace, right? That now protects your shield. Now that your shield is protected, you're naturally protecting your shield because now you're in love and service to others. Now they're experiencing the love in you that you experience with your soul and your spirit. They're experiencing who you really are. Because the energy is naturally going to communicate what love is that they can pick up with their antenna. Well, that's a love energy beam. That's powerful energy that beam's running. Yeah. Now you made a signal translation with a radio set antenna. Okay. Okay. That's like repowering your power station. Flower power, remember? Flower power. Rose, pink rose, crystal, rose, heart, diamond, sun, rose, crystal, heart. Flower power, baby. That's right. That takes a seed and a grower. So when you're the seed and the grower, running pink flower power with a diamond, sun, rose, crystal, heart. Yeah. See? So this is the battlefield. It's a triage zone. Triage, like 3, right? The triad, mind, body, spirit. Mind, the soul's mind, running the operating system, right? So I realized that Gabor Mate is extremely gifted on working with addictions and addiction recovery. But there also is obviously a lot of other information that needs to come forward and unfold in all this. And so I would certainly include not only Gabor Mate, but I believe at one time Gabor was hooked up with, what's his name? Bruce Lipton with the biology of belief, with the Greg Braden guy. And then you might want to throw in Rupert Sheldrake with that, with the morphogenetic field structure. Then you might want to throw in with that Terence McKenna. And then you can probably throw in Ralph Abramson, who ran the visual mathematics lab, right? The numbers game, right? But there's still a lot of information because that's a big tree. If you poured through all that and come what I call full circle to the center point of a living light star, right? And that deals with balance, the center point of balance of every living light star network. Experiencing harmony, experiencing rhythm, experiencing balance, being in love with who you are. Now you know your true self. And that's really what it is. Because if you're learning and you're a child and you're learning, then you're learning who you are by virtue of how you relate to others. Right? Okay, so you're learning more about yourself on how you relate to others. That's called what? Human relations? Hey, I can relate to that. Now you're into the language of DNA. Now you're into the language of numbers. Now you're into the language of math. Now we're in the language of music. Harmony, balance, rhythm. Right? Balance in the water worlds. The purity of the water, the purity of the spirit, the purity of that fire to purify the spirit, which is to purify the water. Purify the water worlds. Right? By virtue of what we're exposed to. As a result of being on a spiritual battlefield, which is an energy war, which is a spiritual war because spirits are in energy. So you have fallen spirits, rising spirits, resurrected spirit. Now you're experiencing more love in your light. Now that's real light because I know what it's like to experience what love is because that's what I'm doing. Oh. I know. So, so now we're back to alfalfa and our gang where they want to come up and poke your eye out going this. You're not supposed to be feeling happy and joyful as a little boy or a little girl. You're too powerful. You're learning too fast. My God, you're a lighthouse already at 7 years of age. We got to knock you down, knock you off your horse. Break your heart, break your spirit, right? That's their goal. Break the girl's motherboard. Break mama's heart, right? Separate the cold fusion and the hot fission between the electron and the proton. Shatter atom's seed, the crystal spiral seed of atom. The first spiral, the first musician, the primal sound field currents. See? So they're always trying to find some way to fix, get around it. Oh, look at the math and science of what we've learned how to be able to do to bend, use artificial light as a result of the mental field, right? So as I've known since I was 6 years of age, okay? They're fucking with the science, they're fucking with the math of the first creation, the original founder's template. It's sort of like this. Once they've learned how to do something, how you did something, right? Now they can take what you did and change it, right, to suit their own self-interest. And then the founders will ultimately find out what was done to the original template. And then when you start adding up all the millions and gazillions of years of wars between seeded races and everything that they've done and the way that they hijack and change grids around and how that affects all the others, right? And that's where we're at now. Okay, which ties into the stuff that I covered earlier in the last few days. But I simply just wanted to put my my little spin on it, you know, the actual spin rotation of Merkaba, because of what I've learned from my own experiences that I share with all the others, right? Because, you know, and I know this particularly working in the healing community with others. The example was Misha. Misha came within a split second of transferring all that trauma into me, and I could have easily transmuted all of it. But she, at the last second, was in fear, and that was the resistant. And the fear that I was experiencing in her was her fear that if she was to experience that much light through me by transferring all that energy, dark essence, okay, all the trauma that she's experienced throughout her bloodline, that can be transmuted through eternal fire, okay, back to the core blast furnace of the primal currents connected to the crystal spiral, right, will allow her to experience the eternal spirit of fire within her from which it began, because now she will experience what I am through her heart, in which all that she was holding on to is now gone and completely transmuted, and now she's been integrated to experience the one. She came so very close and was crying buckets of tears, wanting to do it so much. It's the fear. Because remember, when the trauma occurs, because she had several personalities, it's trying to reintegrate the alters, pulling the alters back that are lost in space, back into the whole to experience the whole. And part of that fear, believe it or not, actually comes from not just the lie by being able to experience eternal unconditional love through her own heart. And you'd say, why would she ever fear that, right? It's the unknown. Because her alters that are running the show fear that that will be what she experiences, because she knows the alters know that. Shadow beings know that. Which means they will no longer be able to feed on her core, what's left of her core, her true identity, what's left of her soul. Okay, so what happens is that she listens to that message. And that is the resistance message to not experience eternal unconditional love. And that resistance prevented her from making a full transfer of all that energy that's been held on to her entire car record throughout her entire cellular history out of fear. Now, when you translate that through those that have committed crimes after crimes after crimes after crimes after crimes against the law of one over a gazillion different years, you can understand how the memory wipes and the reprogramming occur as a result therein. Like Patty mentioned one time, well, they got new souls. Almost as if it was a flippant way to say it. Well, that's just what we got to do, so that's what we did. As if Star Wars is acceptable. It's sort of like kicking the can down the road that, well, that's just the way it is, and we're not going to be able to change it, even though love is the law, right? We're simply going to have to accept the fact that this universe, or if you will, the entire multiverse, is now in a phase in which it's time to pull the fail-safe lever, or if you will, don't break glass, please. Right? Grab the water. Grab the fire. Return to fire. Experience the light. The eternal crystal light from which it all began. Yeah.